Choirs have surged in popularity in the UK, with 2.14 million people joining over 40,000 choirs. 7,000 of those are community choirs, and the rest are based in schools and churches. In our Roots article series, Reimagining Evangelism, we're exploring the fresh ways churches and individuals are finding to share faith. This podcast is a two-part series exploring what we're calling the Choral Revival. How churches and Christian charities are starting choirs in their schools and communities, and how people are discovering faith in Jesus through these choirs. I'm Melanie Cave, Managing Director at Roots, and today I'm talking with Julia Daintree, who lives in Shoreham-by-Sea, West Sussex. She taught music in primary schools and felt called by God to start a gospel choir and then other choirs in her area. She explains the ins and outs of how her various choirs work and connect to church, and how people are connecting through those choirs to find faith. I hope you catch her passion for singing and connecting with lonely people in her community, as well as some practical tips if you or someone in your church would like to start a choir and share your love of Jesus in your community. Thanks for joining us on the Roots for Churches podcast. Here we go. Welcome, Julia, to the Roots for Churches podcast. It's wonderful to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
So, we are doing a series called Reimagining Evangelism, and I wanted to talk to you about your experience where you have seen community choirs helping people find faith. So before we dive into all of the sort of nitty-gritties of those stories, give us a little bit of background on you. Where are you in the country, and what's your connection to choirs?
Well, I'm a musician and an artist, and I live on the south coast of England, near Brighton. So I taught for a long time in a junior school, but that was before I had the initial call from God, I believe, to start a gospel choir for young people. I honestly can't remember how long ago that was, but the gospel choir started about 5 years after that initial hearing from God about it. And in that original time, I had no experience of running choirs. But it was an absolute definite call, alongside some other specifics about sort of teaming with a choir in Africa and this sort of thing. But 5 years later, that came to fruition. And it was mainly because of the experience I had teaching the kids to sing in the school. So it was all kind of linked. That sounds a bit topsy-turvy.
So you were teaching in school, and then you felt this sense from God that you were supposed to do something outside of the school in the community. And where did this idea of a community choir? Because I think choirs in a church sense are somewhat common. People do in some churches have choirs that lead worship, that sing in the church, but this is a different sort of focus.
So at the minute I'm talking about this gospel choir, which was quite a long time ago. And it was the call from God was to have young people singing Christian words, and we were going to intersperse that with some sort of funky soul stuff as well. And then when we sang it out to the community, that would also get the message out. So mainly it was like an outreach thing to reach these teenagers through the words of the songs and through relationships with us, because most of them had never met any Christians before, and this was more part of a team. But
so this team came together to start a choir with young people. Where did you find these young people that wanted to sing?
I advertised it around local schools, and I inherited a lot of the kids that had left the school I was teaching in, and they wanted to sort of keep in touch and keep singing, because when they went to their high schools, they didn't really find so much. So yeah, complete strangers and some that we knew. We just put sort of Facebook adverts out and things like that.
Fantastic.
And they came.
And where did you meet?
In our church. So the church very clearly saw it once I talked to the pastor as part of their church outreach. And they've been really, really supportive. Yeah. And it's now been going since 2008, that particular choir. So that's where it all started. We did it with teenagers, and then we had a lot of requests from parents like, why don't you do a kids choir? So there's all community, not church. There might have been a couple of church teenagers there, but not that you'd notice. So they were all, most of them were non-Christians singing just full on Jesus songs. It's always been fantastic. And then after that, someone joined the team to make a team of 3, and we she had a real heart to do an adult choir. So that's
Mm.
how it built. At one point we had all three going. After lockdown, it was harder to keep the kids. So we're actually now just as an adult gospel choir. So that was the first choir.
So tell me a bit more about gospel music and that sort of specific genre, because it seems like that is a well accepted sort of form of music that people are happy to sing Christian songs. Yeah, tell me more about choosing that and how you choose your songs.
I think gospel music is one of the few acceptable faces of church in the community. We do some famous ones that people will know. We do, as I say, we intersperse it with a few sort of, Ain't No Mountain High Enough sort of songs. And then just what seems to connect people the most are like the heartfelt, gut-wrenchingly beautiful words, even if they're not at the place where they're believing it. So we work with adults now. We do it unapologetically, although we're not Bible bashing them. The link to church then often comes through, we invite them to Alpha that our church runs when the choir's not meeting. Surprisingly, a lot of, they do come. I think they've had their eyes opened to the gospel and like, oh my goodness, these people actually believe this. And they come along to Alpha to find out more. And from that's a really amazing way into faith and to, even if not with our church, with a different church. Because there's something about seeing other people who believe this nonsense, isn't there? And like, they don't seem too crazy. Like maybe there's something in it. And Alpha is a really good follow up from that. So that's the gospel choir, all completely community. You don't have to have a faith. You can have a faith, and they come from far and wide. And we do that in the evening. So a lot of people who work come to that one particularly, and a bit of a younger crowd. So that's where the choirs started for me: school, gospel choir, and then the community choirs after that. But going back, this was a call 5 years before it started. And I couldn't have done it. It was only the Lord that could have done it. And, with the church right behind us as well. Yeah,
Brilliant.
it was him.
Yeah. So what inspired you back? And obviously you said you've felt this call from God to do it, but like, where had this idea of a community choir or gospel choir? Had you seen somebody in action? Had you seen a choir and thought, I want to do that? Or did it just drop out of God's
It
idea
just
into your
dropped.
head?
It was, and that's somehow sometimes when it's him, like I wasn't thinking about that. And yeah, obviously I was praying and it's just like, yeah, a bit of a download. And then when it was about to start, I had a very similar experience with just completely out the blue. You need to link with the African choir. And that's a whole other story, but just a load of miracles, like just the right thing at the right time. And we've been linked with this Ugandan choir and school in a region of Uganda near Kampala called Kititika. And we only charge £3 a week. Like it's very cheap because we're all volunteers and all of our profits go to them. And they've actually been here and they've sung with us. And yeah, it's brilliant. We're people we trust now. And yeah, but that's a whole other story. But yeah,
So
it was,
twinning
again,
your
I wasn't
choir.
thinking about African choirs when I was praying. It was like, but yeah, whole other story there.
Brilliant. So what do you think it is about choirs that is connecting with people who would otherwise not set foot in church? Why are they coming along to a choir? Because it sounds like, you just put it on Facebook or you advertise it and they come. What is it?
I think they've had a good reputation in the media. I think since Gareth Malone got going on it. And then there was this dementia choir series and
Yeah.
it's quite common to see choirs also like for mental health benefits and just getting to know people in the community. It's slightly different on the evening one because these are people who are quite often working in the daytime anyway. They're not like after friendships quite so much. They're more about having a release from their day job, their stress, and they come into a church. They don't seem that phased about coming into church. Obviously, it takes some courage the first time. They receive such a welcome. We have quite a few people from our church who will come, and they see it as their ministry to welcome and serve people and have done since the very beginning of that group.
So walk me through a typical choir sort of, if I was coming as somebody new, what would I experience if I came into one of your community choirs? You talked about a
So,
welcome, but what's the running order, as it were?
so that's an evening choir, and there'll be a couple of people on the desk who actually at the minute are not Christians, and they just want to serve the choir, and they get there before me, and they really own it as their own, and then so they get shown in. We give them words because we're kind. Although, to be honest, gospel
So do you
music
just,
should not really have words.
yeah. So
When
they
you
have
work with
a sheet
teenagers
music
and
or
kids,
something?
they just memorize everything. But adults, we're a bit slower. Yeah, and we just sort of get cracking really, and make sure over time we get to know them as leaders. But you can't. What we rely on a lot is the relationships of the people from the church that are there, building relationships, and also people like for the gospel choir, people come from other churches and who've got a faith as well, and they very much the friendships in the room, and people keep coming back. So for my daytime choirs, so after I'd been teaching for 14 years, I again had this other sense of calling alongside, I'll be honest, getting fed up with teaching naughty little boys. But it was definite like that, and a calling like that. I felt the Lord wanted me to do this as as a business and as a full-time job. So I set up this business called Singwell Community Choir. And had a very similar vision, sort of getting, to invite people linked with churches in each case. I got 4 different groups, get people through the door of a church in a loving, supportive, friendly, positive environment. Singing is always good. People come because, we plug ourselves as a wellbeing choir. This is very different to the gospel choir. But people love it, and people are lonely. The daytime ones of a very different crowd. There are quite a lot of mostly young retired, some young mums, all of which want company and positivity. And so for my mum comes, for example, and it's the only day of the week she leaves the house. This is really
Oh.
common story. Loads of people who are bereaved and are looking for a new start and new things. And again, so they walk in the door, they'll be terrified. As you get older, you get more terrified, I find. And they get the warmest welcome. They nearly get hugged to death even just walking in. It's a great big team of people, giving them a name badge, which is very important, actually. They have tea and cake in the middle, so they get to connect with people they don't know. Some of the groups are quite big. So my biggest group's probably about 70 people, although
Wow.
if they all came, it would be more than that. People, we're kind of creating a choir culture, which it's not a gospel choir, so I don't use overtly gospel lyrics. We use pop songs, but ones with a positive message. And I stick a few gospel songs in there as part of pop musicals, stuff people like to sing. Christmas gives me way more scope for spelling out what the words mean and, giving my own story a bit, my own testimony. I'm very happy to do that, but I don't, on the other hand, want them to feel got at and as though I've got them there under false pretenses. Sorry, I can talk a lot about this because I'm very passionate about it.
No, it's really fun. So you've got these daytime choirs that have more, I would say, in contrast to the evening choirs, you have a slot in the middle for cake and chat, and they're much more about everybody's come to sing, but also to build relationships. Whereas the evening one, maybe the emphasis is more on the singing, and the evening one is definitely gospel, whereas the afternoon or middle of the day ones are pop songs. So you've got all these variety of choirs and slightly different emphasis. But what is the fruit in terms of people coming to faith? You said people are very, like, there's a lot of relational friendship that is happening with other Christians to others in the choir.
Yeah.
But when I first heard about you, it was one of your friends in church was saying, there's been a real move of God. There's, people, retirees, people in their 60s, 70s, these are all coming to faith. And that statistically goes against the grain. Like, we sort of see young people coming to faith. We hear about the quiet revival going on right now, and that's Gen Z. But here you are seeing older people coming to faith. And so I'm intrigued of, like, in some ways, the gospel songs might be a way of sharing the gospel message, but in other choirs, it's not even a song that's talking about Jesus, but people are still finding faith. So help me join the dots. How is this working?
I think the friendships between Christians and non-Christians, because they will naturally meet up for coffee. I can't meet everybody. I can't, I can set the culture of a choir by, loving and like being a kingdom environment where everyone's accepted and nurtured and have fun. I really want to bring joy. But I think God's moving between them. People are meeting up. If you go around the town after choir, you can't get a seat in a coffee shop because they're all meeting up after choir. It just makes me so pleased. So they're coming into our church with a bit hopeless, and they find love and they call it their church. It's funny, if you think that's my church, even though they don't maybe come on a Sunday, they kind of own the church as theirs. I'm always inviting them to stuff that we're doing. If I see people that are particularly like a bit broken, like I would naturally draw to them, and it's inviting those sorts of people personally to church has really helped. And then also the rest of the church choir people, like they're giving them lifts, and it is, I think the Lord's working through all of us. I don't think it's just the obvious. I don't know what he's doing, but he's drawing people in. There's loads of opportunities to invite them to things and to give my testimony like along the way. But I think people are lonely, people find friends, and through that I think they're finding God. And they think, again, they're like, I didn't know sensible people believed this. And then you invite them to Alpha and they come and you're like, oh my God. And I'm surprised every time. And then from that, we've had some baptisms recently with some of our choir members, which is just, it's moving and it's wonderful. And the choir's been a starting point. I think it's a starting point through the door, and I think it's a starting point for love. I think people don't get a lot of love.
Yeah.
Does that join any dots?
It does join the dots.
No,
that's really good. I think churches sometimes think, oh, we'll do a food bank, or we'll do a soup kitchen, or we'll do a sort of a warm spaces cafe. And they're all ways to serve or offer mercy to those in need. But one of the things that you're highlighting is that people are actually really lonely, and they want friendship, and they want meaning, and they also want to do something. They don't always want to be on the receiving side. So with your choir, they're coming and bringing of themselves by singing, and then they're going and performing to the rest of the community. So they're contributing. And so it's not always a church doing to people, it's people coming to do something together. And I think that gives a lot of dignity and agency. And so you're coming alongside and you're doing with rather than to. And I think that's really powerful. And I think, as you say, it is the inviting and the being upfront and sharing your testimony and inviting people to things. But it's not just that. It's also the relationships, the friendships, the building community, and drawing people into a circle of relationship that they otherwise weren't in. And as they just see the lives of ordinary Christians, they think this is really quite compelling. And I think there's also this window of opportunity. Perhaps maybe this is more true on the South Coast, where people think, I'm going to move there to retire. That as people move, there's a bunch of people who move around, they finish work and they think, I'm going to move to a different house in a nicer neighborhood, or, a different city nearer to my kids or something like that, so I can see the grandkids. And that movement, then they are lonely because they have left their network of friendships. So there's a real moment where people will take up opportunities to build friendships, and these choirs seem to be fitting that, because it's quite inclusive singing. You could be in a wheelchair and still sing. And you could have surgery and come back to singing quite quickly.
I have a lot of people with dementia that join in.
Yeah.
And they come with their carers, some of them physically disabled. Like I've got blind. I've got quite a few who are nearly deaf, and they give it a good go. But like that's our culture. It's about including everybody. If people can't afford it, they can come for free. Like, it's not, and I think that is quite a good witness to the other people that can afford it, and sees that some people are just coming for free, and I'm not getting any money from it. I really think it's like a little church culture, but in the community, and they're coming to us. Like, they're every group. That's my particular choir in my church, but I do it in 3 other churches, and you can see them being invited to things in their community, because I'm a little bit spread out, probably over a radius of about sort of 7 miles. But all 4 churches are trying to find ways to invite those choir people in. One of them puts on a Christmas special, and puts on a choir for the Christmas service, and invite my choir that meet in their church, they're not Christians, to go and help in that group. And 3 or 4 of them have done that, and just brilliant.
So if someone's listening to this and they're thinking, that's quite inspiring, I'm intrigued, I would be interested in either helping to run a choir or starting a choir of this sort of thing in my community, in my church, what advice would you want to give to them?
Pray, listen, because you never know what's going to just drop in. Practically, if you're not a musician, but God has given you a vision to do this, you can do it. Like, loads of choirs have. I'm quite unusual in the way that I just do it all. If I drop dead, they'll finish. But most choirs don't run like that. Most have like a little committee of people who then hire a choir leader. So you could advertise for a choir leader. There's a good website called ABCD, which is where choir posts are advertised. And then you'd have like the Christian background with the vision for it as a little team. But you don't have to do all the music yourself. If you're not a good singer, but God's told you to do a choir, go and hire someone. I would hire a Christian. You could be, I don't know how explicit you're allowed to be about that. You could also just do it with CDs, and you could have, like, a lot of dementia choirs. They don't want to I do things in 3 or 4 parts, and people learn to do that over time. And I make it like, it's fine if you get it wrong. But that's too hard for a lot of people that come, and they don't, some people find my choir too easy. Some people find it too hard. Some of them are literally looking for a sing-along. You could do that with some word sheets and Spotify, and just to gather people together for an uplifting. Well-being is quite a trendy word at the minute. And you can use that to your advantage, because it does make people feel better. And your mission behind it. You know that actually you want these people to come and know Jesus, but actually you do want them to feel better. You do want them to have community. You do want them to feel love in a room and acceptance.
Yeah.
So
you want all of that. It's holistic. If they were lonely and had Jesus, they need both. That's why God put us in community and family. Yeah. So it's all of that. And I think you're right that people are interested in well-being. And it's just about, I suppose, marketing it. So how do you advertise the choirs in your community?
I don't have a load of time to do this. I've got three businesses I run. This is just one. And I'm kind of at capacity. I generally rely on Facebook advertising, because the age group for my community choirs are Facebook users, not all of them, obviously, rather than Instagram or anything like that. There's no point me spending time on Instagram. They're not interested. So I put it on local pages. So there's the Shore and by Sea Facebook pages. There's, for each town that I'm in, there's about 10 local pages that I've become a member of, and I can advertise on there. And that's the main thing that it comes from. Back in the day when we started the gospel choir, there was definitely some posters and flyers going around, But I'll be honest, I've stopped all that because people bring people, and people come to watch the concert and then they want to join the choir. And
yeah, you've
I
got
should
enough.
probably be better at it, but it seems to work.
And is there, people might think, how many people do I have to have gathered to make it a choir? If there's 3 or 4 of us, is it going to work?
I'm talking about the community choir, the daytime one now. I think when I first started, I didn't know how many were going to show up. And for each group, there was probably about 20 on the first time, and it was fine.
Wow.
It was really good.
Yeah.
I reckon if you're doing a sing-along group, you could get away with 7 or 8, and also you can invite your church to come and be part of it. That's part of the vision of it. Boosts numbers and boosts sound, and it takes some courage walking into a choir, because you think, are they going to audition me? Am I going to have to sing on my own in front of someone? Are they going to like me? Or am I wearing the right thing? Is it going to be religious? All that. So yeah, they just come in and they're accepted for who they are, and they can sit what they want.
Do you do a little explanation, or do you do something in your Facebook post saying, don't worry about all these things, don't worry, there's no audition, or just come as you are, to
I
assuage
direct them
those
to the
fears?
website. Yeah. So I put a link to the website, and then all of that's on there. Hopefully they'll get the idea that it's inclusive and not too serious. And, if they're looking for something fun, this is a good one for them. I think I heard a while ago something I found really helpful when I was just doing the gospel choir, that you should pick what you want your choir to be and run with it. So if you want it to be like a absolutely excellent sounding choral experience, and you're going to do it like really, really brilliant, go for it. If that's your vision for the choir. If you want something that's much more chilled out and inclusive, go for it. And you've got to be true to yourself in that, and true to what God's asked you to do. There's no point me doing things in 4 or 5 parts, and they'd be bored stupid. They don't know what they're doing, and they'd leave, and they'd feel condemned in a way. I think there's loads of ways churches could do it without having to be really musical.
Yeah. Well, I think we watch a boys' choir in the cathedral at Christmas or something like that, and we think that's the level of choir. Or we watch sort of the Kensington Temple or something like that. And you think, oh, that's a gospel choir, and you think hundreds of people, multiple part harmony. Whereas actually most people want something a bit easier to access, something a bit simpler. And as you say, something that makes them feel good, and somewhere that they can connect friendship wise, and meeting and learning about spirituality and about Jesus on the way. Yay, big win. And I think most people are not interested in joining a cathedral choir. There will be a few, and they will probably go and find it because they'll be that level of musical. But there's a lot of people who that is not quite what they're looking for. And therefore it means that you don't have to be a formally trained music choir teacher. But again, if that's required, we can pay somebody because they've trained for that. So I think you've opened the doors here of like what's
Another
possible.
thing I would recommend is you just go and be part of a choir. If you feel a call from God on this is exactly what I did. I went to I had this very strong calling years and years and years ago. I thought, well, I don't know any gospel music. I've never sung in a gospel choir. Where shall I go? And I thought, oh no, I'll go to a gospel choir. So there was one down in Brighton called Brighton Goes Gospel. It's not running anymore, but Karen Gibson was running it. And I didn't know her at the time, but I could kind of tell that we were on the same page. And I said, and in the break, I went to find her. She was quite scary, but she is lovely. And I said, about this vision I'd had and what, like this. And she says, I get it. She said, come along. So I joined Brighton Goes Gospel. And from that, if you see someone at the front pulling the parts together and having like integrity as a leader. So I would suggest, like, if you really, there's no hurry. If God's given you the vision, little baby steps, and it will happen. And he'll put people in your life that will help and share the vision.
So, Julia, tell me about copyright and costs of running a choir.
If you're doing a gospel choir, in a church building, a lot of your songs are covered under your CCLI license. So that's how we get away with that one. If you do, even in a gospel choir, say you're doing some more contemporary songs like that aren't covered by your church license, you have to pay £2 per person for your biggest number that are singing that together. So say your biggest number is a concert when you have 40 singers, for example, that's £80 per song.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
When
and how
I
do you
my
pay that? Do you go on a website and report it?
Yes. So I arrange my own music. I then have to self-publish. Not everyone will do this. You can actually just buy arrangements from, I would recommend Sheet Music Direct, Sheet Music Plus, and also the big choral companies like Hal Leonard. You can buy choir music. It's fine. I arrange my own because I can make it exactly how hard or how funky or how interesting, or I don't like boring arrangements. I have then self-published them through a company called Arrange Me, and then I have to buy them back.
What, from yourself?
Yes, I then have to buy it back because it's fair, because the songwriter, say I did like I'm Still Standing, Elton John will get 50% of that. The publishing company get 40%, and then I actually get 10% back as the arranger. So that's how that works. And so for my community choir, any song that is still within copyright, not in the public domain, I have to do that. So it is a big expense. I've just had 157 people singing together at my last concert. Anticipating this, I only had 7 songs that were copyrightable, and the rest I did that were free. So, for example, I did my own arrangement of Skyboat Song, being a traditional song. It's fine. I could just do it. So those 7 songs, if you think, I can't do this. It's thousands, with that number of people.
So that's
for 7
why you
songs.
charge for tickets or charge to come to the choir, because it covers buying the
and in fact, I
licenses
started
and the sheet
charging
music.
an extra week per term, which people are happy to pay for copyright costs, because it just gets a bit ridiculous. Or you just use really boring music that no one's ever heard of. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not saying old music is boring, but
no,
people
but
come to choir.
do.
They like to sing things that they know as well.
Yes, well, there's something about singing something and singing along to what's on the radio or that kind of thing that people want to feel like it's contemporary, it's fresh.
It's part of their identity and their culture. And I mean, we've done a Beatles track every single term apart from last.
Yeah. And in terms of other costs, obviously the churches, you might need to hire a hall at a church. Some of the churches might lend that to you for free. But if you're hiring a venue for your concerts, you said, you're often raising money for the school in Uganda. So you're charging tickets and giving money to that. But there are costs associated just with copyright and using music, aren't there? So it's worth
pointing out. Yes. Yeah. But there's, if you were doing, like, most committees sort that out for you. If most choirs are run by committee, and they'll have 2 or 3 people, someone will sort out the copyright, because people say, oh, you'd get away with it, no one would know. But that's a really good opportunity to put your faith in action and say, yeah, but I want to be just completely honest. It's like stealing when you're using someone else's song because it's so good, and then they don't make a penny out of you using it. So I like to be absolutely down the line honest. But it's basically £2 per person per song. You have to buy a copy. Even if you're just learning by rote, like without any words or music, you still have to do that. And even if you're just giving word sheets and not music sheets, you still have to do that.
So it's not getting around it. It's all about rewarding the creative person for their creative work. And so, if we all used it for free, then they can't make a living. So you might think, oh, Elton John and Ed Sheeran, they don't need the money. But there's a lot of people who work with them who get a percentage. So it is a whole industry, and we need to honour the laws of the country and the way it works.
And we need to be seen to be, I find that's quite a point for witnessing as well. Like, well, actually, I'm a Christian, and this is really important to me to do things properly. And I know no one would ever know, but
but I know. Yeah.
You know, I know.
Yeah, and God knows exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, and it matters, doesn't it? It matters. So, right, no, brilliant. Can you tell us some stories about some people whose lives have been changed through your choir?
Recently, I'll just tell you the two people that got baptised recently. I can give you a bit of their story. One man, probably about my age, been coming to Messengers, the gospel choir, for must have been 10 years, like a long time, with his lovely wife. Bit of a background that I hadn't heard until he gave his testimony, actually. And then he was invited to Alpha again, and this time decided to go because had a very Jewish background with his first wife, and wanted to know more about what his new wife believed, who was like a Church of England brought up. And so he went to Alpha to kind of, okay, well, what's Christianity? That was his way in. And of course, through Alpha, found Jesus for himself. Now they both come to our church. Like, he was baptized. I think she was christened to confirm. I'm not really sure. Absolutely lovely couple. He's about 7 foot tall, so you can't miss him. And then he gave his testimony, and he described the choir as, he'd been coming for years without believing it. He said, I found my tribe. He said, I found my sort of people, which is really interesting, because you think that it's chalk and cheese with someone that loves Jesus and someone that doesn't, but it's not. It's like he saw us as his sort of people, which was brilliant. So that's that guy. And then the other guy that was baptized the same day, I had an email from him saying, with a bit of a life story, and he'd had a full and active life, and then was very disabled through a back injury and cancer all over. And he said he used to sing as a kid. How do we feel about having someone like that join my daytime choir? And I'm so glad that I took the time to, sometimes that first email back to someone that's inquiring is really important. And so I was like, absolutely, you're our favourite type of person. You come along. There's plenty of people that can't stand up. Don't you worry. And don't worry if you've forgotten how to sing. It's, and all this, like, really, really welcoming. So he came along, and just lovely man. And he suddenly had some friends, because he'd been totally isolated with his disabilities. And these other people in the choir basically started picking him up to take him, so he didn't have to get taxis anymore. And they'd come on another day as well. He'd come to the one at our church as well, because he enjoyed it so much. Anyone could take him? Yes, of course. So these other Christians went and got him. So he's coming twice a week. Then he started coming in the evening to the Messengers Gospel Choir. So he's now coming.
He's like a choir junkie.
He's a choir junkie, but it's because he's found friendship. But also, it, particularly through the gospel choir, it reconnected him with his mother's faith from his childhood. And he used to sing in a church choir as a kid, and then left as a teenager. So hearing his testimony was really interesting, because I didn't know that about him. But we invited him to church before Alpha, and he was coming to church. So that's actually a 4 time a week. We saw him, and he sat there in church for ages, and and then just made up his own mind. And then when he did Alpha, he basically made his mind up that actually, he was back in tune with God, and he hasn't looked back. He's doing so well. So I still see him at church as well every week. And in fact, he was the only soloist in our summer concert that we've just had. Only with the big concert, I sometimes don't have too many solos, because you can spend so long auditioning. And he auditioned. He just had a go at it one time, and I thought, that was great. I'm hoping to get both of these people involved in the worship team at church as well, so that they can serve church through singing. And actually, the first guy and his wife, I'm going to be inviting them along, because I'm on the worship team there as well. So just getting people involved. And there's another guy. Should I go one more?
Yeah, go for it. You're on a roll.
One other guy, the only time he left his house was to go to the wrestling. And he has a lot of learning disabilities, but he loves this wrestling. And I think he's got some church background and some faith, but you don't know how much he's taking in. He came to choir, and he doesn't open his mouth the whole time. He just sits there,
just listening.
And people talk to him, and he's come out of his isolation. Anyway, he never sings a word. And he can't read either. So he's got these word sheets, but he can't read anything. And there's people helping him all around. He's got some people to talk to. And so we invited him to church, and we've got this saintly lady who used to give these, because they're quite characters, lifts. So she brings him to church. He sits there, doesn't open his mouth, leaves happy. His emotions are a bit up and down anyway. And he went to Alpha, but I don't think he could really understand too much. And last I heard is he's asked to be baptized, and someone's walking through that with him, and he does. It's like a childlike faith, and so I think he's getting baptized in a few weeks, wow. Which is really exciting. But it's that for him, it's only because people are nice to him, and they're not rude to him and abusive, and that he can have as many bits of cake as he wants without anyone nagging him. And people...
I know a few people that would entice them into church.
So there you go. That's three really different people, actually.
Yeah. And that choirs are working for them as places of belonging and places to explore faith, of places to connect with the community. It is really powerful. Yeah.
And God's at work through bits you don't realise. You can't take it in looking out over a room of people singing. You don't know. It stops being your thing. It's it's little pockets of magic going on all over the place. Yeah. It's him. It's like I think singing anyway opens you up emotionally, particularly with some of the deeper songs, even the ones that aren't Christians. So we did Make You Feel My Love by Bob Dylan, which Adele sung. And I was able to say, you think of whoever, someone you've loved or someone who's loved you. And I said, and I'm going to lose it in this song because I'm thinking that this is God singing over me. I said, so you need to ignore me if I start crying. And that's all I said. I don't do that all the time, but I thought that is actually how I deal with that song. And then you look around the room and people are having these sort of moments, kind of spiritual moments, maybe not Jesus related, but emotional moments. And that happens fairly regularly. And I just think it just breaks down those barriers between these lovely people and the Lord, who loves them way more than I do. Right.
I get that. It's beautiful. Wow. Well, I hope people are encouraged, and if they have this sort of stirring in their heart to start a choir, that they take some of those baby steps towards it, have a conversation, maybe share this with this podcast with a friend to say, what do you think? Could we do this? Is this a way that we could connect with others in our community? I do think that choirs are all the rage, as we said. They're on the telly, they're popular in schools, there's youth choirs, there's children's choirs. So it's not a foreign concept to people. And no. As you say, as you open up the invitation, people are like, yeah, I'd really like to do that. I really want to get involved in it.
People like to have something to tell their families that they've done.
Yeah.
If someone rings and said, oh, what sort of week you've had? And they're like, oh, well, I went to choir. Oh, and we're doing this concert. And like you said at the beginning, it kind of gives people dignity and purpose as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's really good.
I'm really happy for people to contact me if they want to talk through anything. So if you just look up the Sing Well Choir website, and you can email me through there. I'll be happy to talk to anyone.
I'll put links to your choirs in the show notes so that they can contact you and get excited.
Okay.
This is brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing these stories, Julia, and your enthusiasm for choirs. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Check the show notes for all Julia's links. You can also read the Choral Revival article on the Roots for Churches website and follow along with all the other Reimagining Evangelism articles. At Roots, we want to resource you to lead great church and connect you with your community. We have resources for worship, learning, and outreach. Explore our family outreach resources like Easter, Nativity, and Poppy Trails, holiday clubs, light parties, Harvest Festival, and many seasonal events you can host. We also have a series of topical resources called Discovering God, designed for those who are just exploring faith. We cover topics like angels, war and peace, God and racial justice, Halloween, what happens after death, climate care, love and relationships, spiritual thirst, temptation, resurrection, and many more. These outlines are jargon-free and accessible, and they're part of your Roots subscription, or you can buy them in a PDF bundle. Head to rootsforchurches.com/DG. If you haven't tried Roots yet, head over to our website and explore our subscriptions. We support gathered worship, preaching, all-age intergenerational services, children and youth groups, under fives and toddler groups, Bible studies, holiday clubs, outreach and seasonal events. You name it, we've got it. Resources, templates, videos and more, all to support you leading in church. See everything that's on offer at rootsforchurches.com, where you can take out a free trial. You can explore digital or add on our stunning full-colour magazines that help you prepare and share offline. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share with leaders in your church and network, and leave us a review as that helps others find it. Together, we can grow.